Welcome to Global Bible Reading. 1 Kings chapter 4. King Solomon ruled all the people of Israel. There are the names of the leading officials that helped him rule. Azariah, son of Zadok. Azariah was the priest. Elihoreb and Ahijah, sons of Sisa. Elihoreb and Ahijah had the jobs of writing notes about the things that happened in the courts. Jehoshaphat, son of Ahilud. Jehoshaphat wrote notes about the history of the people. Benaiah, son of Jehoiada. Benaiah was the commander of the army. Zadok and Abiathar. Zadok and Abiathar were priests. Azariah, son of Nathan. Azariah was in charge of the district governors. Jabud, son of Nathan. Jabud was a priest and an advisor to the King Solomon. Ahisar. Ahisar was responsible for everything in the king's home. Adoniram, son of Abda. Adoniram was in charge of the slaves. Israel was divided into 12 areas called districts. Solomon chose governors to rule over each district. These governors were ordered to gather food from their districts and give the food to the king and his family. Each of the 12 governors was responsible for giving food to the king 1 month of each year. These are the names of the 12 governors. Ben-Hur was governor of the hill country of Ephraim. Aker was governor of Makaz. Salbim, Beth Sames, and Elon. Beth Hanan. Ben-Hez was governor of Arubot. Soko and Hefer. Ben Abinadab was governor of Naphtali. He was married to Tapha, daughter of Solomon. Bana, son of Ahilud, was governor of Tanakh and Megiddo and all of Bethshan next to Zarethan. This was below Jezreel from Bethshan to Abel Meholah across from Jokmeam. Ben-Geber was governor of Ramoth Gil. He was governor of all the towns and villages of Jair, son of Manasseh, in Gil. He was also governor of the district of Agob in Bashan. In this area there were 60 cities with big walls around them. These cities also had bronze bars on the gates. Ahinadab, son of Iddo, was governor of Mahanaim. Ahimaaz was governor of Naphtali. He was married to Basemath, the daughter of Solomon. Bana, son of Husai, was governor of Asher and Alad. Jehoshaphat, son of Beruah, was governor of Issachar. Shimei, son of Elah, was governor of Benjamin. Gibar, son of Uri, was governor of Gil. Gil was the country where Sihon, the king of the Amorite people, lived, and the country where Og, the king of Bashan, lived. But Gibar was the only governor of that district. There were many people in Judah and Israel. The number of people was like sands on the seashore. The people lived happy lives. They ate, drank, and enjoyed themselves. Solomon ruled all the kingdoms from the Euphrates River to the land of the Philistine people. His kingdom went as far as the border of Egypt. These countries sent gifts to Solomon, and they obey him all of his life. This is the amount of food that Solomon needed each day for himself and for all of the people that ate at his table. 150 bushels of fine flour, 300 bushels of flour, 10 cows that were fed good grain, 20 cows that were raised in the fields, 100 sheep, wild animals such as deer, gazelles, roebucks, and game birds. Solomon ruled over all the countries west of the Euphrates River. This was the land from Tiphsah to Gaza, and Solomon had peace on all sides of his kingdom. During Solomon's life, all of the people in Judah and Israel, all the way from Dan to Beersheba, lived in peace and security. The people were at peace sitting under their own fig trees and grapevines. Solomon had places to keep 4,000 horses for his chariots, and he had 12,000 horse soldiers. And each month one of the 12 district governors gave King Solomon all those things that he needed. This was enough for every person that ate at the king's table. The district governors also gave the king enough straw and barley for the chariot horses and the riding horses. Each person brought this grain to required places. God made Solomon very wise. Solomon could understand many things. His wisdom was too great to imagine. Solomon's wisdom was greater than the wisdom of all the men in the east, and his wisdom was greater than all the men in Egypt. He was wiser than any of the men on earth. He was even wiser than Ethan the Israelite. He was wiser than Haman, Karkul, and Darda, the sons of Mahol. King Solomon became famous in all of the countries around Israel and Judah. During his life, King Solomon wrote 3,000 wise teachings and 1,500 songs. Solomon also knew very much about nature. Solomon taught about many different kinds of plants, everything from the great cedar trees of Lebanon to the vines that grow out of the walls. King Solomon also taught about animals, birds, and snakes. People from all nations came to listen to King Solomon's wisdom. The kings of all nations sent their wise men to listen to King Solomon. Chapter 5. Hiram was the king of Tyre. Hiram had always been David's friend. So when Hiram heard that Solomon had become the new king after David, he sent his servants to Solomon. This is what Solomon said to the king Hiram. You remember that my father, King David, had to fight many wars all around him. So he was never able to build a temple to honor the Lord his God. King David was waiting until the Lord allowed him to defeat all his enemies. But now the Lord my God has given me peace on all sides of my country. Now I have no enemies. My people are in no danger. The Lord made a promise to my father David. The Lord said, I will make your son king after you, and your son will build a temple to honor me. Now I plan to build that temple to honor the Lord my God. And so I ask you to help me. Send your men to Lebanon. There they should cut down cedar trees for me. My servants will work with yours. I will pay you any price that you decide as your servants' wages. But I need your help. Our carpenters are not as good as the carpenters of Sidon. When Hiram heard that Solomon asked, he was very happy. King Hiram said, I thank the Lord today for giving David a wise son to rule this great nation. Then Hiram sent a message to Solomon. The message said, I heard the thing that you asked. I will give you all the cedar trees and the fir trees you want. My servants will bring them down from Lebanon to the sea. Then I will tie them together and float them down the shore to the place you choose. There I will separate the logs, and you can take the trees. Solomon gave Hiram about 120,000 bushels of wheat and about 120,000 gallons of pure olive oil every year for his family. The Lord gave wisdom to Solomon as he had promised, and there was peace between Hiram and Solomon. These two kings made a treaty between themselves. King Solomon forced 30,000 men of Israel to help in this work. King Solomon chose a man named Adoniram to be the boss. Solomon divided the men into 3 groups. There were 10,000 men in each group. Each group worked 1 month in Lebanon and then went home for 2 months. Solomon also forced 80,000 men to work in the hill country. These men had the job of cutting rocks, and there were 70,000 men to carry the rocks. There were also 3,300 men who were the bosses over the people who did the work. King Solomon commanded them to cut out big, expensive stones to be the foundation for the temple. These stones were carefully cut. Then Solomon's and Hiram's builders and the men from Babylon carved the stones. They prepared the stones and the logs for building the temple. Chapter 6. So Solomon began to build the temple. This was 480 years after the people of Israel left Egypt. This was during Solomon's 4th year as king of Israel. It was in the month of Joab, the 2nd month of the year. The temple was 60 cubits long, 20 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high. The porch of the temple was 20 cubits long and 10 cubits wide. The porch ran along the front of the main part of the temple itself. Its length was equal to the width of the temple. There were narrow windows in the temple. These windows were narrow on the outside and larger on the inside. Then Solomon built a row of rooms around the main part of the temple. These rooms were built on top of each other. This row of rooms was 3 stories tall. The rooms touched the temple wall, and their beams were not built in that wall. That temple wall became thinner at the top. So the wall which made one side of those rooms was thinner than the wall below it. The rooms on the bottom floor were 5 cubits wide. The rooms on the middle floor were 6 cubits wide. The rooms above that were 7 cubits wide. The workers used large stones to build the walls. The workers cut the stones at the place where they got them out of the ground. So there was noise of hammers, axes, or any other iron tools in the temple. The entrance of the bottom rooms was on the south side of the temple. Inside there were stairs that went up to the 2nd floor rooms, and from there to the 3rd floor rooms. So Solomon finished building the temple. Every part in the temple was covered with cedar boards. Solomon also finished building the rooms around the temple. Each story was 5 cubits tall. The cedar beams in those rooms touched the temple. The Lord said to Solomon, "If you obey all my laws and commands, I will do the thing for you that I promised your father David. I will live among the children of Israel in this temple that you are building. I will never leave the people of Israel." So Solomon finished building the temple. The stone walls inside the temple were covered with cedar boards. The cedar boards went from the floor to the ceiling. The stone floor was covered with pine boards. They built a room 20 cubits long deep inside the back part of the temple. They covered the walls in this room with cedar boards. The cedar boards went from the floor to the ceiling. This room was called the most holy place. In front of the most holy place was the main part of the temple. This room was 40 cubits long. They covered the walls in this room with cedar boards. None of the stones in the walls could be seen. They carved pictures, flowers, and goats into the cedar. Solomon prepared a room deep inside the back part of the temple. This room was for the Lord's box of the agreement. This room was 20 cubits long, 20 cubits wide, and 20 cubits high. Solomon covered this room with pure gold. He built an incense altar in front of this room. He covered the altar with gold and rubbed gold chains around it. There were 2 statues of cherub angels in that room. These statues were covered with gold. All of the temple was covered with gold. Also, the altar in front of the most holy place was covered with gold. The workers made 2 statues of cherub angels with wings. The workers made the statues from olive wood. These cherub angels were put in the most holy place. Each angel was 10 cubits tall. Both cherub angels were the same size and built the same way. Each cherub angel had 2 wings. Each wing was 5 cubits long. From the end, one wing to the end of the other wing was 10 cubits, and each cherub angel was 10 cubits tall. These cherub angels were put in the most holy place. They stood beside each other. Their wings touched each other in the middle of the room. The other 2 wings touched each side wall. The 2 cherub angels were covered with gold. The walls around the main room and the inner room were carved with pictures of cherub angels, palm trees, and flowers. The floor of both rooms was covered with gold. The workers made 2 doors from olive wood. They put those doors at the entrance of the most holy place. The frame around the doors was made with 5 sides. They made the 2 doors from olive wood. The workers carved pictures of cherub angels, palm trees, and flowers on the doors. Then they covered the room with gold. They also made doors for the entrance to the main room. They used olive wood to make a square door frame. Then they used fir to make the doors. There were 2 doors. Each door had 2 parts, so the 2 doors folded. They carved pictures of cherub angels, palm trees, and flowers on the doors. Then they covered them with gold. Then they built the inner yard. They built walls around this yard. Each wall was made from 3 rows of cut stones and 1 row of cedar timbers. They started working on the temple in the month of Joab, the second month of the year. This was during Solomon's 4th year as king of the Israel. The temple was finished in the month of Bul, the 8th month of the year. This was during the 11th year that Solomon ruled over the people. It took 7 years to build the temple. The temple was built exactly the way it was planned. Chapter 7. King Solomon also built a palace for himself. It took 13 years to finish building Solomon's palace. He also built the building called the Forest of Lebanon. It was 100 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high. It had 4 rows of cedar columns. On top of each column was a cedar capital. There were cedar beams going across the rows of columns. They put cedar boards on top of these beams for the ceiling. There were 15 beams for each section of columns. There was a total of 45 beams. There were 3 rows of windows on each of the side walls. The windows were across from each other. There were 3 doors at each end. All the door opening and frames were square. Solomon also built the porch of columns. It was 50 cubits long and 30 cubits wide. Along the front of the porch there was a covering supported by columns. Solomon also built a throne room where he judged people. He called this the Hall of Judging. The room was covered with cedar from the floor to the ceiling. The house where Solomon lived was inside of the Hall of Judging. This house was built the same as the Hall of Judging. He was built the same kind of house for his wife, the daughter of the king of Egypt. All of these buildings were made with expensive blocks of stone. These stones were cut to the right size with a saw. They were cut in the front and in the back. These expensive stones went from the foundation up to the top layer of the wall. Even the wall around the yard was made with expensive blocks of stones. The foundations were made with large, expensive stones. Some of the stones were 10 cubits long and others were 8 cubits long. On top of those stones, there were other expensive stones and cedar beams. There were walls around the palace yard, the temple yard, and the porch of the temple. Those walls were built with 3 rows of stone and 1 row of cedar timbers. King Solomon sent a message to a man named Huram in Tyre. Solomon brought Huram to Jerusalem. Huram's mother was an Israelite from the family group of Naphtali. His dead father was from Tyre. Huram made things from bronze. He was a very skilled and experienced worker. So King Solomon asked him to come, and Huram accepted. So King Solomon put Huram in charge of all the bronze work. Huram built all the things made from bronze. Huram made 2 bronze columns. Each column was 18 cubits tall and 12 cubits around. The columns were hollow and the metal was 3 inches thick. Huram also made 2 bronze capitals that were 5 cubits tall. Huram put these capitals on top of the columns. Then he made 2 nets of chains to cover the capitals on top of the 2 columns. Then he made 2 rows of bronze, then hooked like a pomegranates. They put these bronze pomegranates on the nets of each column in order to cover the capitals at the top of the columns. The capitals on top of the 5 cubits tall columns were shaped like flowers. The capitals were on top of the columns. They were above the bowl-shaped net. At that place there were 20 pomegranates in rows all around the capitals. Huram put these 2 bronze columns at the poles of the temple. 1 column was put on the south side, and 1 was put on the north side of the entrance. The column on the south was named Jachin. The column on the north was named Boaz. They put the flower-shaped capitals on top of the columns, so the work on the 2 columns was finished. Then Huram made a round tank from bronze. They called this tank the sea. The tank was about 30 cubits around, and it was 10 cubits across and 5 cubits deep. There was a rim around the outer edge of the tank. Under this rim there were 2 rows of bronze gourds surrounding the tank. The bronze gourds were made in one piece as part of the tank. The tank rested on the backs of 12 bronze bulls. All 12 of these bulls were looking out away from the tank. 3 were looking north, 3 east, 3 south, and 3 west. The sides of the tank were 3 inches thick. The rim around the tank was like the rim of a cup or like the petals on a flower. The tank held about 11,000 gallons. Then Huram made 10 bronze carts. Each one was 4 cubits long, 4 cubits wide, and 3 cubits high. The carts were made from square panels set in frames. On the panels and frames were bronze lions, bulls, and cherub angels. Above and below the lions and bulls there were designs of flowers hammered into the bronze. Each cart had 4 bronze wheels with bronze axles. At the corners there were bronze supports for a large bowl. Both had designs of flowers hammered into the bronze. There was a frame on top for the bowl. It was 1 cubit tall above the bowls. The opening for the bowl was around 1.5 cubits in diameter. There were designs carved into the bronze on the frame. The frame was square, not round. There were 4 wheels under the frame. The wheels were 1.5 cubits in diameter. The axles between the wheels were made as one piece with the cart. The wheels were like the wheels on a chariot. Everything on the wheels, the axles, the rims, the spokes, and the hubs were made from bronze. The 4 supports were on the 4 corners of each cart. They were made as one piece with the cart. There was a strip of bronze around the top of each cart. It was made as one piece with the cart. The sides of the cart and the frames had pictures of cherub angels, lions, and palm trees carved into the bronze. These pictures were carved all over the carts, wherever there was room, and there were flowers carved on the frame around the cart. Huram made 10 carts, and they were all the same. Each cart was made from bronze. The bronze was melted and poured into a mold, so all the carts were the same size and shape. Huram also made 10 bowls. There was one bowl for each of the 10 carts. Each bowl was 4 cubits across, and each bowl could hold about 230 gallons. Huram put 5 of the carts on the south side of the temple, and the other 5 carts on the north side. He put the large tank in the southeast corner of the temple. Huram also made pots, small shovels, and small bowls. Huram finished making all of the things King Solomon wanted him to make. This is a list of the things that Huram made for the temple of the Lord. 2 columns, 2 capitals shaped like bowls for the top of the columns, 2 nets to go around the capitals, 400 pomegranates for the 2 nets. There were 2 rows of pomegranates for each net to cover the 2 bowls for the capitals on top of the columns, 10 carts with a bowl on each cart, the large tank with 12 bowls under it, the pots, small shovels, small bowls, and all the dishes for the Lord's temple. Huram made all the things that King Solomon wanted. They were all made from polished bronze. Solomon never weighed the bronze that was used to make these things. There was too much to weigh. So the total weight of all the bronze was never known. The king ordered these things to be made near the Jordan River between Sukkot and Zarethan. They made these things by melting the bronze and pouring it into molds in the ground. Solomon also commanded that many things be made from gold for the temple. These are the things that Solomon made from gold for the temple: the golden altar, the golden table. The special bread offered to God was on this table. The lampstand of pure gold. There were 5 on the south side and 5 on the north side in front of the most holy place. Gold flowers, lamps and tongs, the cups, the tools used to keep the lamps bright, the bowls, the pans, the dishes of pure gold for carrying ashes, the doors at the entrance to the temple. So King Solomon finished the work he wanted to do for the Lord's temple. Then King Solomon got all the things that his father David had saved for this special purpose. He brought these things into the temple. He put the silver and gold in the treasuries in the Lord's temple.